Hi, hello, welcome to today's video. My name is Monty if you are new here. It is officially August, which means that it is time for me to tell you about all the books that I read in the month of July. So in total, I read 7 books. Technically, I finished the 7th book in the very beginning of August in the first couple of days, but I'm including it here because I read the majority of it in July and I'm done with it at this point, so I just want to talk about it. So I guess you could say that I finished 6 books, but I read 7 books in July. I had a pretty good reading month. There weren't any books that I actively disliked, and I gave 1 book a 5-star, and then the other 6 were just kind of like pretty good reads, so I'm excited to talk about them. I feel like there's something for everyone in this video. The first book that I read is Funny Story by Emily Henry. By reading this book, I have now read all 5 of her major romance novels, and I was thinking about how I would rank all of them, and I really struggled with this. And I know that everyone has a different way of ranking Emily Henry books. I feel like everyone has a different opinion on it, but for me, I know that my number 1 is Happy Place. Obviously, I've talked about it so much in my other videos. And then I know that number 5 would have to be People We Meet on Vacation. I don't know why I feel this way because I read it a pretty long time ago, but I just know that I didn't feel that strongly about it. And then the other 3 kind of just fall right in the middle for me. So Book Lovers, Beach Read, and Funny Story are all kind of on the same playing field. I have a hard time explaining the plot of Funny Story because it's so convoluted, but let me attempt it. We're following our main female character, Daphne, who has just uprooted her life to go and move with her fiance, Peter, to his hometown in Michigan. It's kind of where they decided that they were going to build and start a life together. And they're nearing their wedding date, and Peter goes on his bachelor party. And the morning after his bachelor party, he comes home and he tells Daphne that he has decided to leave her for his childhood best friend, Petra. And so Peter and Petra have decided to go immediately on this week-long vacation to give Daphne time to figure out a new living situation because Petra is now going to move in with Peter. And Daphne is completely unfamiliar with this town. She doesn't know anybody. And so the only living arrangement that she can kind of scrounge up last minute is to move in with Miles, who is Petra's ex-boyfriend that she also just dumped for Peter. And so Daphne and Miles end up being roommates, and a romance ensues. This is really cute. It was very enjoyable. As always, the banter is unmatched. Emily Henry is the queen of dialogue, and I enjoyed it just as much in this book as I have in her other previous works. There's a lot of healing that takes place in the book. Miles and Daphne are both recovering from their individual breakups, and then separately, Daphne is sort of healing from some past family trauma. But the theme that I enjoyed reading about the most in this book was Daphne's in her 30s and she lives in this new place and she's trying to figure out how to form friendships. And so there's a lot about building community in your adulthood that I really liked reading about, and it felt very relatable to me. I'm in my 30s. I know what that's like. I'm in the middle of it myself. That was just nice to read about. This book has a lot of like cute small town vibes, and it was overall just like a really nice love story. I didn't love it as much as Happy Place, but like I said, in my ranking of Emily Henry books, it falls in that middle tier, and I imagine that pretty much anyone who picks this up is going to have a good time with it to varying degrees, but I would recommend. I thought it was good. After that, I was kind of in the mood for like a thriller mystery type of story, so I picked up In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. So this is a dark academia mystery. So in this story, we are following our main character, Jessica. She is not the most likable of characters. We're in her head and we're hearing her thoughts, and I would say that we all have very similar thoughts as Jessica. They're thoughts of insecurity. She just wants to be loved. She just wants to be accepted. She feels like she's always kind of come up in second place. Like she's never been at the top. She's never been the most desirable, the most of anything. You could say that she herself feels like she's a little bit of a sidekick type of character, type of personality. And that's relatable. And she's having these thoughts in her head, but she just takes it one step further and she acts on those thoughts. And she's just a bit morally gray. But essentially in college, Jessica was part of this really tight-knit group of friends, and their senior year, one of them gets murdered, and the murder never gets solved. They never figure out who actually committed the crime. Fast forward to 10 years later, it's their college reunion, and the rest of the friends are returning to campus to celebrate 10 years out from college. And while they're there, the brother of the murder victim corners them, and he's like, "Hey, I know for a fact that one of you is responsible for my sister's death, and we're not leaving here until we figure it out." And so for the rest of the book, you're kind of jumping back and forth between timelines, going back to college and seeing, you know, all of these friends and their interactions with the murder victim, and then going back into present day where they're trying to figure out which one of them did it. And I will say, if you really want to know who committed the crime, you can figure it out. I figured it out right before it was revealed in the book, but I know that other people figure it out much earlier on in the story. And for some that's a pro, for some that's a con. A lot of people want to be thrown off, but a lot of people like to have that satisfaction of figuring out the mystery. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. I think that this is the perfect book to read on a vacation. It's a perfect book to take with you to the beach. You have to use very little brain power, and you can kind of just forget about it once you're done with it. It didn't rock my world. I thought it was a fun time. It was very quick, very easy, just kind of like your standard mystery. And I think that I would give this a 3-star rating. If you're going on vacation soon and you're looking for a book, this might be the one for you. The next book that I finished was an audiobook. I listened to it. It was my memoir of the month, if you will, and that is Tell Me Everything by Minka Kelly. I read this on the recommendation of Marissa from Margins of Marissa. She has an excellent booktube channel. You must go check her out. She has like the most creative video ideas, and she is a graphic designer, so she does a lot of book cover, book design type of videos that I really enjoy watching. So I'm linking her channel down below. Go check her out. But Marissa listed this book as being her favorite book of the year so far in her mid-year freakout tag, and so I was definitely very curious. I love memoirs and I trust Marissa's judgment. It was also available to me immediately, so I picked it up, I listened to it, and I gotta say, Marissa was absolutely right. This is a very vulnerable, honest account of Minka Kelly's upbringing. If you don't know who Minka Kelly is, she is an actress. She was on the TV show Friday Night Lights. I've never actually seen her in anything, but I had a vague idea of who she was. But yeah, it's about her childhood and her very tumultuous relationship with her mom. Minka Kelly did not have your standard Hollywood origin story. She really had a rough go of things. And in listening to the audiobook, you could feel how emotionally charged it was. Like, this was just like a very real experience for her. And I think she has just such a wise perspective on the events that took place in her childhood and the people who have wronged her, like her ability to forgive. Oh, it was so good. It was so moving. I just thought her ability to write with such compassion about some of the people who really didn't treat her well, I thought it was really impressive. You can just tell that there's been some time that's passed since all of this went down, and that she's had some time to process and some time to heal, and from what I can tell is still actively working on, you know, just dealing with all of the trauma that she suffered. So a really excellent memoir. I would highly recommend listening to it if you're interested. The next book that I read is Open Water by Caleb Nelson. This book I had very high hopes for, but ultimately it left me with very mixed feelings. So this is a short book. It is 150 pages or less. It's a romance novel or novella, I guess. I don't really know how many pages a book has to be considered a novel versus a novella, but either way, it's a short little book. It is beautifully written, okay? This book is very, very well written, very lyrical. I would equate it to Ocean Vuong's writing. I do feel like Ocean Vuong's writing reads just like straight poetry, whereas Caleb Nelson still reads like prose. It's not quite as poetic as Ocean Vuong's writing. And at the start of the book, I was really, really enjoying the writing. I was highlighting things on my Kindle. There were sentences that really, really hit me. But about midway through the book, I realized that the same thing that happened to me when I read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous was happening to me with this book. The writing became such a focus for me that it kind of like took me out of the story. And because of that, the themes that were discussed just seemed to have less of an impact on me, which is really not what I was hoping for. I was really excited about what was going to be discussed in this book. It's also written from the second person perspective, so there's a lot of you did this and you felt this way and then you da 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 da. And at first that was very jarring to me, but I eventually got used to it and got in the flow of the second person perspective, but I still felt like it kept me at a distance from the characters. Like I couldn't get close enough to them to feel what they were feeling. So that POV is just not my favorite in this type of story, where I feel like you're really supposed to be feeling those emotions. So basically the story is about two Black British artists in their own right. One's a photographer, one's a dancer, and they meet each other and form a friendship that eventually turns into more than a friendship. And with that you perspective, I read it as if the main male character, a future version of himself, was talking to a younger version of himself, but I don't know if that's how it was intended. And so because the focus is more on the male character, you get to hear his thoughts on what it's like to be a Black man in the UK, and get to hear his thoughts on police brutality in the UK. And like I said, I think that those are really important themes and topics to discuss, but I just didn't feel as affected by it because of the writing style. I really do think it just depends on what you're looking for in a book. If you read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous and you loved it, then I really think that you should give this book a chance, because I think that you will also really, really enjoy it. I personally just felt a little bit too disconnected from the storyline and from the characters to fall in love with the book as a whole, but I am still gonna give this book a 3-star rating because I do feel like the writing was so stunning and so worth praise. Then I read the highly acclaimed, super hyped Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I did a whole reading vlog on this where I go really in depth with my thoughts, but to put it succinctly, I felt a little underwhelmed given the obsession with this duology. And I haven't finished the duology. I've only just started Crooked Kingdom, and I still have really high hopes for Crooked Kingdom being a 5-star read for me, but Six of Crows was just not as immersive of an experience as I was expecting. And it's probably because of the expectations that I had going into the book, and I fully recognize that. If for some reason you don't know what this book is about, it's basically just a group of 6 criminals, 6 misfits who team up to carry out this impossible heist. They're supposed to break into a high security prison and kidnap someone, and most of the book is just kind of hearing each of their backstories and learning kind of what brought them to the point where we are in the book. Why are they there? What are their motivations? Why do they feel certain ways about other characters, etc., etc. So it's a very character-driven story in my opinion. It does have a good amount of plot, particularly towards the end, and I had a good time with it. It just didn't like changed my world, you know what I mean? So I gave this a 3.75. I still think that most people would really have a good time with it. It's just not like a new favorite of all time for me. But stay tuned, because next month I will be reviewing Crooked Kingdom and I might feel entirely different at that point. After that, I picked up another romance book and I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is the second book in the Part of Your World Interconnected series. So the main female character in this book is the best friend of the main female character in the first book. I loved Part of Your World, and so I was really excited to pick up Yours Truly. And I gotta say, for the first 30% of the book, I was so sure that it was going to be a 5-star rating from me. And that is entirely because of our main male character, Jacob. So Jacob Maddox is not your typical male lead in a romance novel. He's not smooth, he's not suave, he's not good with his words, he's socially awkward, he's quiet, he's reserved. He just comes off as like a little bit fumbly. And because this is written from a dual perspective, we actually get chapters where we're inside Jacob's head, which again, I just love that Abby Jimenez does that she gives you both perspectives. And when you're in Jacob's head, you learn that he suffers from anxiety, social anxiety. He's an introvert, he's an overthinker, and he's got a lot going on internally, and it doesn't always manifest externally the way that he wants it to. And I have just never felt so seen in a book, ever. I didn't completely relate to him. Like, I don't have generalized anxiety and I'm not an overthinker, but I'm a huge introvert and I do suffer from social anxiety. And so being able to hear Jacob talk about it and like hear what was going on inside his head, it was just like, it was everything to me. I was so excited to read about that and to see it written in that type of way in a book. And I really, really loved the way that Brianna, the female main character, the way that she recognized it in Jacob and the way that she responded in such an understanding way. Like, I really, really loved their connection. Where the book kind of lost me is just like the excessive miscommunication. I don't like miscommunication like a lot of other people. I can usually handle it in small doses here and there because that feels realistic to me. Like, we're just not all that great at communicating our feelings to one another, but I just thought it was like really overdone in this book, and it made it really frustrating to read about, which is just like not what I'm looking to feel when I'm reading a love story. I just like desperately wanted them to just talk to each other, and you can avoid all of this mayhem, you know what I mean? So while this book had a 6-star character for me in Mr. Jacob Maddox, I just couldn't give it a 5-star rating because of all of that miscommunication. So I'm landing at around like a 4 stars, with the caveat that that entire 4 stars is made up of Jacob's character. Like, that's how much I loved reading about him. But the story itself was a little bit of a miss for me, which is such a bummer because I really, really liked the storyline in Part of Your World, and I was kind of expecting that I would feel the same way with this one. I do plan on reading Just for the Summer, which is the 3rd book in this series, at some point in August. I think it's going to become available to me, and the second that it does, I will be reading it. And I know that a lot of people say that that's their favorite book out of these 3. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and we will just have to see how I feel about it. Okay, and then the last book that I read in July, I read Physically, and it was my only 5-star book, and that is The Body by Bryson. If you've been following me for some time, you will remember that I started reading this book in February. I did like a little weekend reading vlog where this was featured, and I was loving it. I was having such a good time with it. But because it's nonfiction, it's really easy to put down and kind of forget about, and you don't have to pick it up right away because there's not any continuity in the story that you need to like keep reading to understand what's going on. So I put it down and then I didn't pick it up for a couple of months, and then in the middle of the summer I picked it back up and I really read most of it in July. So this is a nonfiction book about the body. As you may have guessed, I read A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson in 2018, and I remember exactly when I read it, where I read it, because it actually changed my life. And so I have been wanting to read this ever since it came out in 2019, and it did not disappoint. So it's about the body, and it's a very broad overview of the body. I mean, you really can't get that thorough into something as complex as the human body in 380 pages. So it's more of like a fun facts type of book. He goes into the different bodily systems, the brain, the heart, the skin, etc., and just kind of gives you like a general overview of each of those systems and tells you things that you definitely did not know. Bill Bryson is a brilliant author. He is an excellent writer, a great communicator. This is super approachable. It's written in a very conversational tone. It's like you're sitting down with him and just talking to him. It's not super academic. It's not like you're in a classroom lecture type of setting. It's just fun and informative and a perfect nonfiction book, in my opinion. If you come across this at any point and you're intimidated by it, I would encourage you to just read the first 5 pages, and I assure you that you will be convinced to read the rest. That's all it will take. You probably can't see this, so I'm not going to show you, but on pages 4 and 5, I have 4 different things underlined, and when I reread all of them, they're just astounding. This is really such a great book. It makes you feel so awestruck by your body and really just makes you marvel at the miracle of life. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this book if you're looking for a nonfiction book that's easy to read and that's fun. Oh, and I didn't even say this, but this book is just like infused with humor. I had I had multiple laugh out loud moments. So if that sounds appealing to you, please pick up The Body by Bill Bryson. And that wraps up my month of reading in July. I hope that maybe you got a recommendation or 2 out of this video. And if not, thank you for being here, for watching all the way through. Let me know down below what you are currently reading, or maybe even what your favorite book of July was. I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you in the next one.